It's time for another one, another podcast. And now we have a name for it. And we thought about this, and I'm going to share the story of how we developed it. We realized that there's a candy with 2 M's, right? Mm-hmm. And it's plain and peanut. So we thought, how could we be better than that? 3 M's.
Yeah.
Now, that's also Scotch tape, I think. I think 3M is the company that makes
3M.
Scotch tape.
But we're M cubed. M to the third.
Right. Mm-hmm. But then we needed, so we came up with mind, muscle, and meatballs. And then we realized, like, meatballs doesn't really tie in, so we changed it to mind, muscle, and mayhem. But that seemed a little outrageous, so we discussed it. We said, well, what do we talk about? Well, curing, healing, getting people well, medicine. So there we are.
Yeah, as a side note, I love meatballs, so
Mind?
we could always go back to that.
Okay, we could do mind, muscle, and medicine, and then meatballs in parentheses. Yeah.
For Kristen.
Yeah. So I want to talk about this topic, and I'm not sure where we're going to go with this, but the topic is inflammation, because in a prior conversation, we were talking about healing, about getting people well, and that the root cause of all disease or all chronic disease is inflammation. And I don't want to know if it's fair to say most people don't know that or most doctors don't think that way, but I think it's reasonable to say allopathic medicine doesn't treat chronic disease as if inflammation is at the heart of it. Correct?
Yes, and I would say that some of the things that we use to address inflammation can appear as a wonder drug at first, but then actually end up destroying you. So the one that comes to mind is steroids. So at first, steroids may be addressing inflammation and bringing it down, but continuous use of steroids.
Corticosteroids.
Yeah, could be very detrimental to many parts. The side effects associated with it would be very bad. So steroids can be a quick fix for, acute inflammation, bring it down, but long-term...
Did you say cute inflammation?
Acute.
Oh, acute. Okay.
Acute.
I thought
acute.
look at that cute inflammation.
Cute inflammation.
But no, acute.
Yeah, so something that's inflamed right now, we need to immediately bring it down and address the symptom of inflammation. Steroids might be an option, but long-term use of steroids can be very bad for people.
So what we've learned is that people need to know, whatever it is, because they're sort of blindly led by conventional medicine in some cases, by old tired theory in some cases, by some newfangled idea that's making somebody money in some cases, by misinformation, disinformation. So more than anything else, what I hope we do with every podcast is give people power. And not like Napoleonic power, but power to guide their own lives, because so many people are disempowered. They want to lose weight, so they trust in a diet program. They trust in a drug. They trust in a procedure rather than realizing they have the power.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, in today's yoga class, I just finished leading a yoga practice, and we were discussing, as part of the practice, the power to heal is inside you. Tap into this power. And this can mean so many things. Healing on a physical level, so your actual body, or overcoming disease, or just overcoming the daily things that you did. Did you walk upstairs? You got little tears inside your muscle. So the power to heal is inside you. This also means healing emotionally, mentally, and healing spiritually. And all of these things go hand in hand.
And we've spoken before about the 2 healing systems of the body, the immune system and the parasympathetic recovery system. And when those things get suppressed or destroyed, that's when people start to move along the disease continuum, and they go to a doctor and they share their symptoms. And what the doctor has to do is get them a code. Right? That's the first goal. Because if they get them a code, then what?
Well, then we can prescribe something that's specific or allowable under that code.
Right.
And I just don't, as a human, I don't want what I'm allowed to do to my body being dictated by codes that are on a paper that someone in a room decided was going to be appropriate.
Well, with the Affordable Care Act, otherwise known as Obamacare, they expanded the system, the ICD codes. This was the 10th revision, so these were called the ICD-10 codes. And the goal was to get everything significant a code, so if you go to the doctor, they could go into their software and they can go, oh, here's what you have. And now they could submit it to the insurance company. So I took a look at some of the codes, and I think you'll find this interesting. W59.22XA. That's the code for being struck by a turtle. I'm not kidding. This is real.
I have one.
I know, so be careful. But in case you do get struck by a turtle, I'm telling you there's a code for that. Listen to this one, W220.2XD. Walked into a lamppost. There's more. Subsequent encounter. Like, you did it again. There's a code. You walked into a lamppost once, and then you went a second time, and they have a code for that. I'm not making this up. Oh, there's a lot of these. W61.33. Pecked by a chicken.
That could happen.
Have you ever gone to the doctor for that?
I could see that.
There's one for being struck by a duck, bitten by a pig, problems in relationship with in-laws, for real. Now, I'm sure that code is really it's prevalent, right? So I can keep going, but they have a code for everything, including fecal urgency. Prolonged stay in a weightless environment. There's a code for being hurt at the library. Stabbed while crocheting. But get this. There's a new code. Honestly.
Okay.
For a condition that is called burnout.
Oh. Okay.
So this is now a disease.
Right.
Burnout is now a disease. No longer is it just something that we say he's burnt out, but now there's a code for that, which means there could be treatments for that could be reimbursable.
So I also saw something interesting, a commercial that was on the TV, playing in between the news. And it was for a disease that is caused, they named a disease, caused by a side effect from a drug. So it's caused by a drug, and now they called that, which is a side effect from a drug, a disease name.
There's a code for that.
And there's a code for it.
And now the solution is?
Another drug.
Which may lead to?
More drugs. Right.
As long as they find another code, they can find another drug. And insurance will reimburse, right? So burnout is now a specific ICD-10 code. It's a diagnosis. So they can prescribe drugs for that. And they have treatments for that. But it got me thinking. So I did a little bit of research, and I pulled up some research studies, and I found a whole lot, honestly. And medical burnout is a very real issue. Early on in a doctor's career, as well as latent in a doctor's career. And a doctor who's responsible for people's health, who's in a state of burnout, is probably not a very beneficial health practitioner, right? So it becomes important to identify. But one of these studies that I pulled up demonstrates clearly the link between diagnosed burnout and inflammation.
Okay. And what is
increases
burnout?
Well, there is a scale. There are a couple of scales. One is a Mayo Clinic scale. The other, I think, is called the Maslach scale. Okay. And it's a questionnaire. And it's a self-assessment. But you talk about your emotional exhaustion, your lack of achievement, and then there's a third category, which is depersonalization. So under those subject matters, you score yourself. And if you have a certain score, it is either mild burnout or moderate burnout or severe burnout. So what they found is mild showed it correlated with moderate or low levels of increases in cytokines and interleukins, inflammatory compounds. Severe burnout had huge elevations in cytokines. So what does this mean? Well, it now makes sense that people who have burnout are more likely to have a cardiovascular incident, correct?
Right.
So even this is inflammation.
Everything is.
And here's the real question. If we think about the fact that conventional medicine does not treat disease as inflammation, I don't think that most physicians would meet an executive or a doctor with burnout and go, you're inflamed. We have to reverse the inflammation, right? It's not normally what they would do. But if somebody is experiencing inflammation, if they go to conventional allopathic medicine, they will probably get medication to treat the symptoms. So the big question is, are they better off, at least in some cases, treating the inflammation themselves?
I mean, my answer would be 100% yes. And even when you think about something like depression, this has to do with inflammation in the brain. And so if we can start to bring inflammatory responses down, inflammation in the brain specifically down, this may address serotonin issues. So as opposed to not dealing with the underlying condition and trying to overcome the symptom with a medication, really getting to the root cause, which is potentially inflammation, this could be a game changer for managing just about every disease out there.
Kristen Camella, Dr. Kristen Camella, do you have the means by which people can reverse inflammation?
Everyone has the means inside their own body to address inflammation. This is your own immune system, and allowing your immune system to function in a normal way, you can address inflammation. So we just have to give you the right tools to tap into that power.
So I'm going to ask you a question. I don't want you to answer it yet, but it ties in with what you said about corticosteroids, or cortisone.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a drug, because there may be a code for all of these conditions, is there a drug that can reverse inflammation? Don't answer it yet. And we certainly know there are anti-inflammatories, right? There's Advil and there's Aleve and there are all of these over-the-counter anti-inflammatories. But is there a drug that if medical science or conventional medicine says, oh, these things are all inflammation, that they can then safely and efficaciously prescribe so all these people get well? Now, before we get into that, rheumatoid arthritis, we think of it as joint
Autoimmune.
pain.
Right. We think of it as an autoimmune disease. Your immune system is not functioning, and typically as a result, a joint or joints begin to hurt, and you might degrade in one of those joints. So the tissue may break down.
So the immune system is the system of the body that is responsible to inflame, right? So if some pathogens enter my body, then my immune system wants to kill those pathogens, and that's a really good thing, right?
Right.
Bad biotics, bad microbes somehow get through my skin. I want my immune system to handle it. So if I get cut and somehow the knife was dirty, then the area where I got the cut is going to become inflamed. That's a good thing. That's the immune system.
I mean, it's actually even more miraculous than this. So really the first line of defense is your platelets. Kick it into high gear, because if your platelets don't kick it into high gear, you will bleed out, and your platelets say, we better stop the bleeding. We're going to clot. We're going to stop the bleeding and make it stop. And platelets start commanding the rest of your body what to do. They're like the first responders, and then they take over. And they start telling everyone what they need to do. And the white blood cells come in, and the white blood cells are like the foot soldiers. They don't care. They don't report to anyone. They just blow the joint up. And they mess with the pH. They mess with the temperature. You may run a fever. Your body gets warm, and their intention is to make sure that nothing survives, including that bacteria that was on that dirty knife that just gave you the cut.
So the incredible innate intelligence of the human body, the miraculous immune system that knows to send out inflammatory compounds and white blood cells and take care of the invader, is your best friend unless it goes rogue.
And your worst enemy.
So that same system that is your best friend leads to inflammatory responses or inflammation of systems of your body.
Yes.
So I'm going to give you just an example, just to illustrate. I think people will be able to relate to this, of how the immune system can sort of work against you. Let's just say somebody smokes a cigarette. They've now brought tar and nicotine into their respiratory tract. These are bad guys, right? There's no human benefit to tar and nicotine. So the immune system is now called upon to get rid of the bad guys.
Yes.
Yeah? Mm-hmm. But the bad guys don't stay in the respiratory system. They get themselves into the bloodstream, and with time, they're gone completely. So let's think of the little immune warriors trying to catch them, and they can't.
Right.
But then the immune system goes, okay, problem solved. Until an hour later, they smoke another cigarette. And over time, this becomes a chronic response. They keep bringing in the aggravant, and the immune system keeps trying to heal it or inflame it, and it can't catch it. So sooner or later, the immune system is now triggered, and it becomes chronic, and we get a cytokine storm, and it inflames the entire system. So now we have respiratory disease and or cardiovascular disease.
Yes, and I'm going to say something that may be considered controversial.
Okay. I'm all for that.
Yeah. So I believe that all autoimmune diseases are caused by some environmental toxin that has made your body go haywire. And that can present in a lot of different ways.
Do you believe there's a moment, like a tipping point?
I don't know that you could necessarily say switch autoimmune disease versus not. I think that your body's constantly getting bombarded. And I think this concept that an autoimmune disease is genetic is 100% wrong.
I'm with you.
I think you could be genetically predisposed, but
Yeah.
it's an epigenetic change that has been presented because of an environmental toxin. And the reason that we see this running in families is because they're exposing themselves to the same environment families are.
This leads to a topic for another podcast, not today. But if what you say is true, and I'm with you, then detoxification becomes another really important word. And I think what people think of, they think of a cleanse. They want to do a liver detox. They want to do a gallbladder cleanse. They want to do a systemic on a specific system rather than recognizing we've got to detoxify the gut and the cell.
Right.
And that we can do.
Recognize what the toxin is. And it could be something as simple as, well, every day you're putting on Victoria's Secret Angel perfume. Well, that is not supposed to be in your system, and there are a lot of toxins that are made in a laboratory that have no business being exposed transdermally to your skin. And those are going into your system. They're messing with your hormones, and you could be creating a systemic issue.
So here's another podcast. We got a lot to do. We got a lot of work to do.
We do.
Because, man, there are conditions that are, I'm going to say they're invisible ailments, but they're worse than that. They're ailments that are hard for other people to believe. So when somebody becomes sensitive to EMF, when somebody becomes sensitive to their Wi-Fi, and they tell other people, I can't go in there because you have Wi-Fi, they appear to be crazy. And when people say, I can't tolerate your perfume, they appear to be crazy.
Right.
But what you're saying is these are toxins that are showing up environmentally that are triggering an adverse effect in the body or flipping a switch
Right.
that now switches on this autoimmune response, the root cause of all disease. And it doesn't always manifest the same.
Right. And you cannot manipulate the immune system over and over and over with the same toxin over and over and not expect that there's going to be some effect. The body's going to say, okay, it's too much. It's bombarding cytokine storm. And it's just your body's defense mechanism. So once you've gone into a full-blown autoimmune disease, you have been bombarded with some sort of environmental insult repeatedly. So instead of bringing down your immune system and trying to stop you from having an autoimmune response,
What if?
get rid of the toxin. Find the toxin that has created this problem in the first place. And that's where medicine fails.
And I'm going to go even a step further. I'm going to say it's possible to reverse the condition without ever finding the toxin. Just knowing that it's a toxin. Mm-hmm. Right? I mean, at some point in your life, whether it was Lyme disease or mold or whatever the trigger was, something sent you over the edge. If you identify the toxin, maybe you just have to use a different shampoo.
Right.
Right?
Right.
But in some cases, it doesn't matter. Let's just get it out of your body. Because it might be something you used 10 years ago, or a place that you lived, or something you were breathing in, or the formaldehyde in your new carpet.
So I'm going to say something that's potentially controversial again.
I love it.
So in Western medicine, instead of cleaning up, removing the toxin, and trying to get a more natural approach of your immune system, we will bombard your system to bring down the immune system by giving you immunosuppressants. And then because you're immunosuppressed, we will force multiple vaccines, flu shots, etc., to prevent any sort of insult from a virus. But this is more insults to your immune system. So you're potentially taking a forest fire and like airing it to make it blow worse.
I'm going to read something to you.
Okay.
I'm not going to mention the drug.
Okay.
I'm just going to say adverse reactions, the administration of a particular drug, and a particular immunosuppressant drug, which is what brings this to mind, include diarrhea, leukopenia, which is white blood cells diminishing, sepsis, which is toxicity in the
Huge
bloodstream.
infection.
Yep.
Mhm.
Vomiting, a higher frequency of certain types of opportunistic infections. This is what they say over the nice music in the commercial.
Correct.
You know what I mean? reactivation of viral infections, hypertension, abdominal pain, and death. Okay, hold on a minute now. Death sounds pretty severe, right? So if option A is take the drug because it has nice music and a butterfly on the commercial and people holding hands and smiling, or reverse the inflammation and detoxify yourself naturally, I don't see much choice. I'm not risking death. I'm going the route that's going to make me better, right? But this is why I said at the beginning, people need to know. They don't know. Because the doctor says, here's the drug. We'll give you the drug that will calm down your immune system.
Right.
And look what happens. Look at all the risks you run when you calm down the system that I called earlier your best friend. Oh, by the way, you might get an infection. And you might get some viruses showing up and taking over your body. And you might die.
One thing that the current...
Am I exaggerating, by the way?
No. I mean, that's every, immunosuppressant drug reads exactly the same. Those are the side effects associated with it. And they're common. Those are like the common ones. The ones that have to be noted in the ads are the common ones. The less common ones, they don't even have to say those.
Right.
I mean, they're even more insane. And they happen. They happen. You cannot manipulate the immune system repeatedly and expect that something's not going to happen.
So let's talk about what we do every day in terms of getting people well. Brag a little bit about what we're doing for people in the facility to help them detoxify and reverse inflammation, because people need to know.
Yeah, I think step one is give them their power back, because they feel like they've lost their power. They go to the doctor and they're afraid. They're afraid not to get on what the doctor says, even though they read the label and they don't feel good about that, and they're taking the medications and they know they're not getting better. I mean, that's the other thing that it doesn't say on there. Oh, and by the way, you will never be healed or cured.
There is no likelihood that this medication will cure the condition. Zero.
Yeah. And so, we really want to give people their power back. Let them realize that the power to heal is inside them. They can tap into it, take back control, and start to detox from your life. And toxins can present in a lot of different ways. This isn't just, perfume that you smothered on your neck. This is also emotional toxins, stress, nonstop stress from work, from relationships, from children.
There's now something called social stress that relates to social media, honestly.
One of our best tools is when we teach people how to breathe, because they forgot how. You do an amazing seminar, and that's the first part of our seminar.
Yep. Breathe and reawaken the lymphatic system.
Yeah.
That's where we start. So giving people power back. Awaken your diaphragm and move lymph. That's where it starts.
And I can't imagine why this isn't the first line of defense when you go to your physician who is supposedly looking out for your best interest in your health.
Well, we can come up with all the theories as to why, but I'm going to do this right now as if we're talking to one individual who happens to be listening, who's either considering medication or is on medication and is not getting well. And my message is never get off the medication.
No.
My message is, are you exploring every option? And is the medication working? And if they said, yes, I feel great, it's changed my life, I'm so happy now, great. But that's not what we see. We see people who come in with a list. There's a form that I use when I say, are you on medications? And very often I turn the page over because there's more. And they all happen the way you described earlier, where they take one, and then there's either a side effect or something else shows up, and there's a drug for that. And before you know it, they're taking 16, 17 medications. So if they're working to make you better, great. But how come when you were on 4, you had to go to 5 and 6 and 7? Maybe they're not working. So let's try the alternative, which happens to be the one God gave you.
Right.
Your immune system, right? But let's get the interference out of the way. Let's get breath to come back. Now let's go a little more high-tech than that, because once we get people breathing and moving lymph, and of course eating better, because lots of toxins come in through what you ingest. Everybody kind of knows what it means to eat organic, but the truth is, Kristen, if you live not in a rural area where there are real farms, it's hard and it's expensive, and that's the truth. It's worth it, But, grass-fed beef is a lot more expensive than conventionally raised beef. They're not even in the same category in terms of health potential. So it is, and this is a sad reality of the world we live in today. But is it worth it? Oh, yeah, it's worth it. So, we've heard for a long time food is medicine. Well, that's true. So we take care of your food, we take care of your breath, we get your body working back in terms of detoxifying, getting rid of toxins. But then we have the high-tech stuff we can do, like cryo and hyperbaric and infrared. So just talk a little bit about that, because this is what we're doing every day.
Yeah, I mean, you can use modern technology to help you tap into that ancient science that's inside you. Humans have been around for a long time, and that potential is inside, but some of the modern technology that we have can help us to turn on that natural ability to heal. It doesn't have to be so challenging, and I think in today's society, it is challenging to get outside and breathe clean air. I mean, that's not, if you live in a city, that's not really a thing anymore. So being able to utilize some of the technology that we have at the facility to help us achieve that health and reverse some of the effects of aging and toxins that we're constantly exposed to. Cryotherapy is kind of a fan favorite. A lot of people come in saying, well, I don't like being cold. I say, I know, nobody likes being cold. That's not what this is. This is not, we're not going to make you get in a cold ice bath.
I've seen this become almost a weird addiction. I've seen people who, they're trembling going in. They're doing it because they were kind of coaxed. Right? They're almost not doing it willingly, you know? And there comes a point that it's like, well, I don't want to be a baby. I don't want people to laugh at me. I'm going to do it. But then they always ask the question, do I have to do the full 3 minutes? No. If you can't take it, you could leave after 10 seconds.
Right.
And then, we're coaching them. We're talking to them. You can do it. And then when they come out, they want to go back. Not immediately, but they go, they love it.
Yeah.
They love it.
Smiling ear to ear, endorphin rush, adrenaline, and
so
just
it's not
this
the
feeling of
cold you
accomplished.
Love. Yeah, I did it. But it's not the cold you love. So I don't want people to think, oh, I don't like cold, so I shouldn't do it.
Right.
It's the outcome you love. Like, is it worth 3 minutes of being uncomfortable and having fun? It is fun.
Right.
To feel incredible and to have a great rest of the day and to get a little serotonin and dopamine boost and to sleep better at night and to carry this forward and to increase blood flow and oxygenation of the cells and to reverse inflammation. Is it worth it? It's a lot more worth it than the side effects that I just read.
Right. Yeah.
So talk about the specifics of infrared.
So we have something called a Juvilite. This is unique because it has both far and near infrared light. Far infrared is not visible to the naked eye. You cannot see it. And this is going to be in wavelengths greater than 700 nanometers. This is really beneficial because it will penetrate through the skin and get deep into your cells inside and help to reset the mitochondria. Mitochondria is all the buzz lately. This is what everyone's talking about. Mitochondria are the powerhouses of your cells. If you keep your mitochondria happy and youthful and healthy, your cells can be so strong and you can live forever. I mean, this is really kind of the fountain of youth.
Well, it is where energy is produced. When you call it the powerhouse, it is, but literally it's where energy is produced.
Correct.
So if you have integrity of the mitochondria, strength of the mitochondria, and efficiency of the mitochondria, you're really good at producing energy. When we meet people who have inflammation and chronic disease, one of the symptoms always is I'm tired.
It's the mitochondria. So a lot of the diseases that we talk about that are inflammatory are also mitochondria issues. The mitochondria are not happy, your cells are not happy, and you're not happy. You can always bring it back to the cell. And if we can make your cells happy, and by the way, the cells are really interesting. They're a lot like humans. So if I were to take your cells and put them in a petri dish,
Please don't.
Yes, it would be fun. If I were to put your cells and not put enough in their little neighborhood, in their dish, I didn't put enough in there, and they were too spread out and they couldn't communicate with their neighbors.
They're lonely.
They would get very sad and they would actually commit suicide. We call it apoptosis.
Yep.
And if I put them in there too crowded and there were too many of them and they were all like lined up next to each other, they would also not like it and they would commit suicide. It's so interesting how your cells are so much like humans. They're just smaller.
It is actually mind-blowing to think that we are made up of living organisms, that every cell is, in fact, a unique organism. And then it gets even crazier when we start to think about the microbiome and trillions of little bugs living inside us.
Right.
It's hard to fathom that. But the truth is, you said if your cells are happy, you're happy. If your cells are healthy, that's what health is.
Yeah.
At the cellular level, if you're healthy, you're healthy.
And if you want to know something even crazier, and we actually did this experiment in our lab, and there's been several groups who have published this. If we took your cells and we played nice, soft music, the cells would grow better than if we played like really loud, obnoxious, terrible sound. The cells would not grow as well.
This relates to Masaru Emoto's work with water and the crystals that develop. So, yeah, it comes down to energy and vibration. And you know what? Let's just go back to if you're in a stressful, negative environment, it's toxic.
Yes.
Right?
That's
and you're
exactly
right.
the point.
We talked about the chemical toxins, but putting too many people in a small space is a toxin.
Yeah.
And making people lonely is a toxin. And depriving people of sunlight, where they develop seasonal affective disorder, where there's SAD, S-A-D-D is the acronym. It's a toxin.
Yes.
So here's what I want to say, and I'm hoping I'm careful in not ever turning this into a commercial. With that said, we're doing this because we are so passionate about our ability to help other people recognize their own power. That's really what it comes down to. So are there places you can go do cryo? Yes, and lots of athletes do cryo, and I encourage it. Are there places you can find a hyperbaric oxygen chamber? Yes, many medical centers use hyperbaric for wound healing. But I don't know that there are many places that look at the holistic, let's improve what nature gave you in the first place. So we will teach you to breathe differently and better, and that will cost you nothing. We will teach you to reawaken your lymphatic system. We will teach you strategies for food intervention and exercise intervention that allow you to bring back parasympathetic recovery. And with all of that, we have the enhanced ability to utilize technology to bring you back to a place where all of the innate power that you once had comes back.
Yeah, and I just want to say one thing. Every morning, I wake up and I look in the mirror and I say, who am I going to help feel better today? And I know that there's somebody who's listening to this or watching this right now, and I'm talking to you. Get in here. We have some things that can help you.
Let's leave it at that. There's so much that we need to talk about. There's so much power that we need to give people. Our time is limited only now, but we'll be back with more. And I want people to forward this and share it and subscribe and just be a part of this, because ultimately, not only does that person that you're speaking to need us, but the people they know need us, and the people they know need us. And at the very least, think about what we're sharing here and ask yourself the question, is what I'm doing working, and am I getting back my own power? And if the answer is no, let's try something better. Have a great rest of the day, have a great tomorrow, and be better, everybody. Bye-bye.